simply dive right into the ocean of nectar that is Krishna Katha. Om Ajnanatirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadeeshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So welcome to another exciting, lively, wholesome, wholesale market day of mercy, also known as Ekadashi. And if we are not excitedly waiting for Ekadashi, then I feel as though my life's goal is to somehow change the heart and the mindset one Ekadashi at a time, so that eventually we are kind of jumping and dancing for joy each time that we see that Ekadashi is coming, rather than looking at the calendar and going, oh no, Ekadashi is coming. Hopefully we can create an atmosphere where we rejoice about Ekadashi coming. So let's see what we win. Shastra understands that we need motivation. Shastra always understands that we are not pure devotees. And many times, Shastra isn't speaking to us from the point of view of pure devotees, otherwise we wouldn't have these stories. And so we have so many wonderful tales and histories and all kinds of personal accounts of the amazing things that have happened to people, living entities, moving, non-moving, all due to the benevolent mercy of our Shri Krishna. So Ekadashi is one such day where we can easily uptake a vrat to the best of our ability. Srila Prabhupada made things incredibly easy for us. Simply fast from grains and beans, that's it. You don't have to do much else other than that. Increase your chanting, increase your hearing, increase your loving of Krishna, and that's it. And as far as the grains and beans have gone, as we've evolved as a Krishna consciousness movement, we've kind of added on many do's and don't do's, as my spiritual teachers often say. We've added on so many subsets of rules and vegetables and things that will either break or uphold our vrat or our sankalpa, our vow, for these days. But Srila Prabhupada was incredibly simple at heart, and incredibly accommodating, and incredibly accepting. Simply fast from grains and beans. Easy, take some milk, take some fruits, take some root vegetables. Now Ekadashi becomes National Potato Appreciation Day. And just increase our hearing and our chanting. Increase the amount of times that we favorably think about our Krishna each day. And that's it. It really is one of the best bargains since Sri Nityananda Ram opened up the marketplace of the holy name within Kali Yuga. And I've been saying it all weekend. We New Yorkers really love a good bargain. We like good sales. We like wholesales. We like to buy things in bulk. And so now, we have all the makings of a good sale for a New Yorker. Mercy is on sale. Not even difficult to obtain. And it's on sale wholesale. So we can get as much mercy as we could possibly ever need, and more, simply by taking shelter of Srila Prabhupada, simply by taking shelter of Shri Radha Murlidhar, Shri Gaurachandra, simply by taking shelter of Shri Radha Govinda Dev. So, let us see the glories of this Kamada Ekadashi, an Ekadashi which by its very name fulfills all desires. Sri Sutta Goswami said, O sages, let me offer my humble and respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, by whose mercy I can describe the fast day that removes all kinds of sins. It was narrated to the devoted Yudhishthira by Lord Shri Krishna, and Lord Shri Krishna glorified the 24 primary Ekadashis which destroy sin. And now I shall recount one of those narrations to you. Great learned sages have selected these 24 narrations from the 18 Puranas, for they are truly sublime. Yudhishthira Maharaj said, O Lord Krishna, O Vasudeva, please accept my humble obeisances. Please describe to me the Ekadashi that occurs during the light part of the month of Chaitra, March, April. What is its name and what are its glories? Lord Shri Krishna replied, O Yudhishthira, please listen to me attentively as I relate the ancient history of this sacred Ekadashi, a history Vasishta Muni once related to King Dilip, the great-grandfather of Lord Sri Ramachandra. Sri Ramachandra Bhagavan ki jai. King Dilip asked the great sage Vasishta, O wise Brahmin, I wish to hear about the Ekadashi that comes during the light part of the month of Chaitra. Please describe it to me. Vasishta Muni replied, O king, your inquiry is glorious. Gladly shall I tell you what you wish to know. The Ekadashi that occurs during the light fortnight of Chaitra is named Kamada Ekadashi. It consumes all sins as a forest fire consumes a supply of dry firewood. It is very purifying, and it bestows the highest merit upon one who faithfully observes it. O king, now hear an ancient story which is so meritorious that it removes all one's sins simply by being heard. Once long ago, there existed a city-state named Ratnapur, which was decorated with gold and jewels, and in which sharp-fanged snakes would enjoy intoxication. King Pundarik was the ruler of this most beautiful kingdom, which numbered many Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and Apsaras amongst its citizens. Among the Gandharvas were Lalit and his wife Lalita, who was an especially lovely dancer. These two were intensely attracted to each other, and their home was full of great wealth and fine food. Lalita loved her husband dearly, and likewise, Lalit constantly thought of her within his heart. Once, at the court of King Pundarik, many Gandharvas were dancing, and Lalit was singing alone without his wife. He could not help thinking about her as he sang, and because of this distraction, he lost track of the song's meter and melody. Indeed, Lalit sang the ending of his song improperly, and one of the envious snakes who was in attendance at the king's court complained to the king that Lalit was absorbed in thinking of his wife instead of his sovereign. The king became furious upon hearing this, and his eyes turned crimson with rage. This pastime, as I was reading it and preparing for this lecture, was constantly reminding me that nothing that we think that we are dealing with within Kali Yuga is new. So I'll say that again. Nothing that we are dealing with within this age of Kali, this kind of darkened age of quarrel and hypocrisy, nothing is new. So when we think that everybody had it easier in bygone eras and millenniums and yugas, if this pastime is being narrated to the great-grandfather of Lord Sri Ramachandra, that is at least Treta Yuga. So we are going 2 yugas ago. And so 2.5, basically, because Kali already has some progressing that it's done. And so we see that 2.5 yugas ago, there were still envious co-workers. There were still envious co-workers willing to slander you to your boss. there were going to be people who were going to be so enamored with the love of their life that they simply couldn't get them out of their minds. Um, I say this to remind myself and all of us not to be discouraged by simple material world terms and conditions. Yes, sometimes they're disheartening, but we shouldn't let them discourage us so much that we quit doing whatever we're doing. We shouldn't let that become a supreme obstacle to our devotional service, because it doesn't matter what time we will be born in. If we are in this material world, we will be subject to the terms and conditions of this material world, of which all of these things that we deal with now might come in some way, shape, or form right back around, and then we have to deal with them again, because living entities are living entities. So let's see. King Pundrik is now completely angry, eyes red with rage, which is so incredible that you could have an envious coworker go and complain to your boss, and then the boss takes it out on you, and they're red with rage because you sang the wrong note. Suddenly he shouted, "O foolish knave, because you were lustfully thinking of a woman instead of reverently thinking of your king as you performed your court duties, I curse you to at once become a cannibal." Okay, I said everything that we deal with now, we were dealing with back then. But there were some things that we were not dealing with now that they were dealing with back then. Because no matter how angry your boss is with you, luckily, we don't think. In 9 times out of 10, I would wager to guess that they don't have the power to turn you into a man-eating, crazed, cannibal demon. And so, we thank God for small miracles. O king, Lalit immediately became a fearful cannibal, a great man-eating demon whose appearance terrified everyone. His arms were 8 miles long. His mouth was as big as a huge cave. His eyes were as awesome as the sun and moon. His nostrils resembled enormous pits in the earth. His neck was a veritable mountain. His hips were 4 miles wide, and his gigantic body stood a full 64 miles high. Thus, poor Lalit, the loving Gandharva singer, had to suffer the reaction of his offense against King Pundrik. Seeing her husband suffering as a horrible cannibal, Lalita became overwhelmed with grief. She thought, now that my dear husband is suffering the effects of the king's curse, what is to be my lot? What should I do? Where should I go? This demon, with his 8-mile-long arms, was reminding me a little bit of the Ramayana. When in the midst of the forest, Sri Ramachandra encounters kind of a similar man-eating demon with 8-mile-long arms, except for his mouth was in his belly and his eye was kind of situated. He only had one, and it was kind of situated at a weird angle, and he was covered with all kinds of interestingly demon skin fur. And it's kind of like if we had a cyclops, but worse, way worse. And he tries to grab Lakshman with one arm that is 8 miles long, and he grabs Sri Ram with the other, and he decides that he wants to eat them. And this demon was reminding me also a little bit of Kamada, which was the name of that demon, who also was not originally a demon. Kamada was also under the effects of a curse. So we see that there's a lot of effects of curses happening. And again, thankfully, not that we can see, the effects of curses have kind of lost their potency as the yugas have progressed. And so now we don't see such effective and potent and strong curses. Also because nobody has the potency to give those kinds of curses, let alone bear the effect of such curses. But we do see how the mind can turn us into such a person, such a living entity, living under the effects of such a curse. Where on the outside we still look the same as though we were before, but the mind has tricked us into identifying with all of the worst possible qualities that we could drudge up from the soul of a living entity. So while we might not be dealing with the outward bodily effects of curses, now somehow or other, and what they say is, in previous yugas, demons and demigods, or saintly people and those demoniac living entities, they were in different planets, and then they got closer, they were in the same kingdom, then they were in the same family. Now in Kali Yuga, demons and saints reside within the same body. Which brings to mind our wonderful Sri Krishna's preventative speech to Arjuna, reminding him that the mind can be the best friend or the greatest enemy. And as he also wisely reminds him that every living entity, from Lord Brahma, the very creator, down to the smallest ant, is struggling with the six senses, of which the foremost is the mind. So now we don't think curses are as potent. We don't think the effects of our actions are as potent because we don't see the repercussions as vividly. We don't see anybody turning into a demon with 8-mile-long arms and this spirit for cannibalism and all kinds of things. But it's incredible what the mind can do to a person or a people. In this way, Lalita grieved day and night. Instead of enjoying life as a Gandharva's wife, she had to wander everywhere in the thick jungle with her monstrous husband, who had fallen completely under the spell of the king's curse and was wholly engaged in terrible sinful activities. So this was not like Jada Bharat that we hear of within the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, who even in the form of a deer, he could remember his own past saintly birth as great king Maharaj Bharat. But instead now, because the mind has identified with the body, this Gandharva Lalit was now completely identifying with his new role as this cannibalistic demon, which helps us to remember, what are we identifying with? What is it that we are allowing our minds to identify with? Who are we really? Are we this one body with these certain eye color and hair color and all of these different struggles and joys that come with each and every single body? Or are we living entities meant for service, meant for reviving our relationship with the Supreme Person? He wandered fitfully across forbidding regions, a once beautiful Gandharva now reduced to the ghastly behavior of a man-eater. Utterly distraught to see her dear husband suffer so much in his dreadful condition, Lalita began to cry as she followed his mad journeying. By good fortune, however, Lalita came upon the sage Shringi one day. I was trying to research if this was the same Shringi that was present in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, but I think this is a different one. He was sitting on the peak of the famous Vindhyachala hill. Approaching him, she immediately offered the ascetic her respectful obeisances. The sage noticed her bowing down before him and said, "O beautiful one, who are you? Whose daughter are you, and why have you come here? Please tell me everything in truth." Lalita replied, "O great sage, I am the daughter of the great Gandharva, Viradanva, and my name is Lalita. I roam the forests and plains with my dear husband, whom King Pundarik has cursed to become a man-eating demon. O Brahmin, I am greatly aggrieved to see his ferocious form and terribly sinful activities. O Master, please tell me how I can perform some act of atonement on behalf of my husband. What pious act can I perform to free him from this demonic form, O best of the Brahmins?" The sage replied, "O heavenly maiden, there is an Ekadashi named Kamada, which occurs in the light fortnight of the month of Chaitra. It is coming up soon. Whoever fasts on this day has all his desires fulfilled. If you observe this Ekadashi fast according to its rules and regulations, and give the merit you thus earn to your husband. He will be freed from the curse at once." Lalita was overjoyed to hear these words from the sage. Lalita faithfully observed the fast of Kamada Ekadashi, according to the instructions of the sage Shringi, and on Dwadasi she appeared before him and the deity of Lord Vasudev, and said, "I have faithfully observed the fast of Kamada Ekadashi. By the merit earned through my observance of this fast, let my husband be free from the curse that has turned him into a demoniac cannibal. May the merit I have gained thus free him from misery." As soon as Lalita finished speaking, her husband, who stood nearby, was at once freed from the king's curse. He immediately regained his original form as the Gandharva Lalit, a handsome, heavenly singer adorned with many beautiful ornaments. Now, with his wife Lalita, he could enjoy even more opulence than before. All this was accomplished by the power and glory of Kamada Ekadashi. At last, the Gandharva couple boarded a celestial airplane and ascended to the heavens. Lord Shri Krishna continued, "O Yudhishthir, best of kings, anyone who hears this wonderful narration should certainly observe holy Kamada Ekadashi to the best of his ability. Such great merit does it bestow upon the faithful devotee. I have therefore described its glories to you for the benefit of all humanity. There is no better Ekadashi than Kamada Ekadashi. It can eradicate even the sin of ending the life of a Brahmana, and it also nullifies demoniac curses and cleanses the consciousness. In all the three worlds, among moving, movable, and immovable living entities, there is no better day." I like that the ending says that among movable and immovable living entities, there is no better day, because it reminds us that Ekadashi is not simply a day that comes around to give us grief and tell us that we can't eat bread. Ekadashi is a person. Ekadashi is a Devi. She is a wonderful goddess. And so it is so important for us to remember that when we honor Ekadashi, when we honor this goddess who has appeared, and her only wish is that all those who fast on her day will be benefited. They should have nothing to fear. She wants to wipe away all of the anxieties and eradicate all of the stress and the worries of those who observe the Ekadashi fast. Now, some people might say, there were many Vaishnavas, and it seemed as though within their lives they must have fasted on so many of these days. We can even take the Pandavas, for instance. Yudhishthira Maharaj is hearing all of these glories of these Ekadashis. We can surmise that he must have fasted at least on some of them. And yet somehow he went through so many trials and tribulations. Exile for so much of his life. His life was spent in and out of kingdoms, in exile in one form or another. At least 2-3 different times he's in exile. And then in hiding. And then having to take a lowly role. And then deprived of a kingdom. And then his wife was insulted. You can read about such things in epics like the Mahabharata. And I do urge everyone, please do so. Krishna Dharma Prabhu has written a really, really excellent, world-renowned version, which is so filled with Krishna Bhakti and so filled with devotion to Krishna that it really tugs at the heart. But this is his story. And so we might think, so you mean to tell me that I'm supposed to be fasting on this Ekadashi day, and she will wipe away all the sins and eradicate all the worries and stresses? However, Maharaj Yudhishthir and all of his brothers, I see that they had nothing but stressors in their lives. What is this seeming discrepancy? And how do we reconcile this seeming discrepancy? Within the pages of Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sri Narada Muni comes upon the Pandavas. And the Pandavas are engaged in a discussion. And that discussion is happening because Sri Krishna has just left Indraprasth, their magnificent kingdom. And they're thinking, how do we get Krishna back? And they think, well, we can send an envoy and tell him that we have a festival. They think, no, we just performed a whole Rajasuya. He won't come for another festival. And they're passing around a great many ideas. And finally, one of the Pandavas, I believe it's Bhima, says, tell him we're in trouble. He said, what do you mean tell him we're in trouble? Tell him we're in trouble. We're in grave danger, in danger of losing our lives. He'll come immediately. They all looked at their brother, but we're not in trouble. He says, by the time he gets here, we'll figure out another excuse. The most important thing is getting him back. These trials and tribulations and the stressors that they went through, to them, became their greatest ornament. To them, these stressors became wonderful ways for them just to see Krishna again. In fact, their mother, Queen Kunti, has prayed famously in her prayers, let those calamities come again and again. For by suffering those calamities, then we get to see you. And if we get to see you, then our lives are perfect. Have you ever been in a situation where life has forced you to chant really intensely? There is a certain feeling that comes with intense chanting of the holy name. And then when the situation is past, our chanting goes back to meh. As the kids say, our chanting becomes mid once again. Meh. But the minute that life re-enters the scene, then we start our intense chanting again. And it churns up all of the fire in the heart. It churns up. We are completely focused for as long as it takes, and we are using every sense that we possibly can use to be completely focused on the holy name. Life does this in two ways. Life does this by putting you in circumstances that make us extremely uncomfortable, and then also sometimes when your spiritual master's around. You ever notice the japa gets increased? You get so much. Somehow your whole devotional life gets a reboot and a repaint and a complete renovation, and everything is so perfect because there's a feeling. Guru Maharaj might look at my face and what do we want him to see? Okay, well, I really don't want him to see that I've been slacking. And so if you are fortunate to have some preconceived plans that your Guru Maharaj is coming, you kind of start beforehand if you're smart. You start, okay, I know I can't just jump back on the best sadhana that I've ever had immediately. Let me start a few days in advance. So in this case, the Pandavas are saying, we'll use any excuse to get Krishna here, but we know for sure all of the other excuses, he might not be willing to come. But we know for sure he'll come if we tell him we're in trouble. If we tell him that life has made us so uncomfortable, Krishna will come running. He will drop everything that he's had to do anywhere else. He will run to us. Not only will he run to us, but he'll stay for some time until the problem is solved sufficiently. Let's tell him we're in trouble. Kunti Maharani says, let the calamities come again and again, for by having those calamities come again and again, we get the benediction of seeing you. So when we follow these Ekadashis with faith, and then life makes us uncomfortable, what if that is actually the benediction? Because the benediction is then we can call out with feeling. And if we get to call out with feeling, then Krishna comes running. And once Krishna comes running, what he says is, I don't even really like to give people bhakti, because once I give them bhakti and I come running, I can't leave them ever again. I only say that to say that it does not mean that if we follow this Ekadashi, life will never put us in an uncomfortable situation ever again. But once again, what is our mind identifying with? Is our mind identifying with the personality that says, you know what, I knew it. I knew this was going to happen, and I knew that God never does anything good for me. This is why I'm in this horrible predicament right now. I don't even know why I had any faith fasting on these days and chanting all of these rounds and doing all of these pujas and doing all of these things for good luck. Of course it wasn't going to work. Or do we identify with our minds with the mature spiritual vision that of Prahlad Maharaj, who was willing to never give up. I don't care how uncomfortable life has ever made me. It never made me as uncomfortable as Prahlad Maharaj. Ever. Life never made me as uncomfortable as it made Sri Ramachandra uncomfortable. I haven't had to spend 14 years in any kind of exile living off of roots, and it was almost like a Ekadashi fast every day for Sri Ram. Lakshman wasn't even eating at that point. He had given up eating, he had given up sleeping for 14 years, no problem. And Lakshman simply did that because he loved his brother. I want to be able to serve my Lord, my Sri Ram, my elder brother at a moment's notice. I won't even stop to eat or sleep. Life has never made me that uncomfortable. And Lakshman was not happy about that exile. But life has never made me that uncomfortable. I can't speak for anybody else, but what I do know is every time I read through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, I see people that life has been made so much more uncomfortable for than me. And yet, I find my ways to complain. But each Ekadashi, my hope is that I cut it down one less complaint. And I look at it just a little bit differently. Life is making me uncomfortable. This means I can beg others to pray for me. And if I beg others to pray for me, and if I also pray for myself, and then if I also pray for others, then that just means more and more and more people are chanting the holy name. Then maybe it's not so uncomfortable. We have the instance of Lalit and Lalita, and Lalita was willing to do whatever it took to simply restore her husband back to his former glory. And it says that he was able to enjoy even more than before, because not only did it nullify the curse, but it cleansed his consciousness. And I can only imagine that that must have come with some tinge of devotion, because Ekadashi Devi never leaves us without some little handprint of devotion. And once we've received that handprint of devotion, that never leaves. Even for personalities like Ajamil, our Vaishnavacharya's comment, and there are many commentaries that he was saved because he had upon him the handprint of devotion. And no matter what, somehow he could bury all of his good qualities, but he couldn't rub off that handprint of bhakti. So it is my prayer that all of us somehow receive the handprint of bhakti upon us today on Kamada Ekadashi, whether big or small. And I pray that it never ever leaves us, no matter what we do or whatever we think we're doing. I pray that we never get in our own way. And I pray that these wonderful glories and pastimes will forever protect us with constant remembrance of our dearmost friend Krishna. Shri Ekadashi Devi ki jai, Shri Radha Murlidhara, Shri Gaura Chandra ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Achita Gopi. Wonderful class, very inspiring. What's that on your forehead? Is that the handprint of Bhakti? Tilak?
My tilak? Of course, you know.
Great, great. Thank you. Okay, dear devotees, it's your turn to shine, to ask questions. Maybe you'd like to reflect something back. Jeffrey Eckler asked a question that's above my pay grade. Can't even read it. Jeffrey Prabhu, please.
Yeah, that is a really cool question.
Hare Krishna, thank you for always bringing us back and reminding us to just maybe make one less complaint. That's a very good point. But my question is, and it's not just in this story, but in many stories we see these multipliers being in effect as sort of a storytelling function, but it also is just interesting to me. Having grown out of a Catholic tradition as a youth, you see in the Bible multiples of 3 everywhere, and in Vedic culture it seems to be multiples of 4. 16 rounds, 108, all these kinds of things appear a lot. So is there like a significance to that?
That is such
multiplier?
that is really a really cool, fascinating question. I feel like, you know who would probably know the most scientific Shastric Sanskrit answer for that? It's like Hari Parshad Prabhu and Amarendra Prabhu. The both of them, I feel like, would know the actual Shastric reference and the real scientific breakdown of it. As it goes for in storytelling, the measurement of a yojana is 8 miles. And so with all of his measurements, they can be broken down into yojanas, half yojanas, or several yojanas. And so my thinking is, in telling this story, the unit of measurement that they would have been using would have been a yojana. And so my guess is, especially in regards to this one particular story, yes, much easier when you're using this unit of measurement.
So rather than 8 miles long legs, he would have
it's one yojana
legs.
per
I see. Okay, thank you.
When you doom scroll on your phone, make sure you don't go into yojanas with a feed.
Right.
Jani Thai Prabhu, Adipusha Prabhu. Temple Vasis, please.
Yeah. I have to admit, praying for Prabhupada what to say, but I don't feel anything particular. Just a very sweet class. Not only the content of the class, but the way Mataji speaks it with such sparkling joy and enthusiasm and faith. It's very refreshing. So thank you very much for your love for Krishna.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
We continue to bless it with pure devotional service.
Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu. I have a reflection. I really appreciate how Chita Gopi explained that we shouldn't stand in our own way. I was like, Krishna is not deficient for sure. Why am I in Maya constantly? Am I a big-time demon? Why is Krishna not defeating all these tendencies that I have? What's wrong? So I relate to that point. Thank you so much.
Devotees ask Srila Prabhupada that question. You know, why is it that Maya is so strong? We fall into Maya, and can't Krishna help us? Srila Prabhupada's response was, "You're always in Maya. It's just that sometimes you fall into Krishna."
Yeah. I was thinking maybe someone else is in my way. Maybe, I don't know, my spouse or a content creator on YouTube or something, or maybe Jeffrey Eckler. I don't know what it is, but I'm in Maya.
I mean, we love to not have the proper view of Maya Devi and her service. This is her domain. She's in her eyes. She's like, you came to my playground. You come to my playground, then you complain when you have to follow my rules. And Shri Krishna told you, better stay with me. We said, no. I need to go somewhere else. It was us. I'm the problem.
Yeah. You created this material world. That's the answer my Guru Maharaj received from Prabhupada when he kind of challenged Prabhupada. Why is there evil in the world if Krishna is in charge? Why is there evil? Who created this mess? And Srila Prabhupada made big eyes and said, you created this world. It was very profound. Jamuna Jaya has her hand up. Is Jamuna Jaya in Maya also? I can't believe.
No way.
Oh no, I am. I just want to thank you, you always remind us about the power of gratitude. Like in this, when you're saying, I mean, you were jokingly saying, but it is true. We think like, my boss won't turn me into cannibal. You know, it really is just a reminder of like my Guru Dev always says that gratitude is the breeding ground for any path of spiritual life. That without gratitude, you can't grow. It's the fertile soil. So I always love that you remind us that these times have always been tough. We're not the Pandavas, and look what they go through to, not like, oh, woe is me, and then look at Queen Kunti, can we do what she does with her woe is me? So such a beautiful point. Thank you for always reminding us of that every class.
No, Jamuna Jaya is filled with gratitude and sparkling enthusiasm. If there is one personality that is always like really imbibing the name of like a whole Jamuna River of gratitude and enthusiasm and a willingness to serve and somehow a smile through it all. Like I just like look around and like the world's falling apart. And then I get to a Thursday night kirtan and I turn and I see Jamuna Jaya and she's and I'm like, how is it possible that the planet's falling apart and she's just completely floating above it? Not at all disturbed. And also with the best profession ever. She had on a shirt the other day that said, I love clowns. And I was like, no, really. It's true. Because of Jamuna Jaya.
Yeah, Jamuna Jaya, you have no idea what effect you have on us, Jamuna Jaya.
I see your blessings. Thank you. You have no idea what effect you have on me. I felt so weird when I with the shirt. I'm greeting Radha Swami with the shirt. I love clowns.
It was great.
He looked down at me kind of like. Very cool.
Jamuna Jaya Devi. Jamuna Jaya Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Okay, temple room, please. Reflect, shine back. Maybe Arjuna Prabhu would like to speak. That would be super cool. Maybe he'd like to chuckle in line with Guru Sada and Shastra.
He chuckled.
Good.
He's always chuckling. Hare Krishna. Yeah, the thread of these discourses about Ekadashi, someone's in distress. In this case, he took a big birth as a cannibal, and then very nice that his wife was able to perform some pious activity to atone for his deviation. In this case, he was meditating on his wife instead of doing his service of singing for the king. So he was meditating on sense gratification, and then he received this reaction. And then she performed the austerity, and then, according to the story, they went to the heavenly planets. And of course, that's nice that they were relieved from the stressful situation, but we know, and of course Master knows, we all know, that just atoning for a simple reaction and finding yourself in a comfortable enjoyment situation is not a complete solution to the problem, and that we want to remember that Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, is indicating that engaging in devotional service fully, unceasing and motivated devotional service is really the only way to satisfy the self, satisfy Krishna as the perfection of life. And aspiring to just get rid of our sinful reaction and go to the heavenly planets is something that we might be attracted to, but less than perfect. Yeah? Maybe much you can say something about that. I always hear these stories and I think, oh, okay, they went to the heavenly planets. Cool, great. Okay, now he's no longer a cannibal. Great. But what about devotion? What about devotional service to Krishna as the real solution, not just atonement for sinful reactions? Right? Any comments on that? I always make the same comment on these. Who wrote this book anyway? Prabhupada gave us this? Is it a purport or just the text? Or
so yeah, this one is just the text, and there are several books on the different Ekadashis that have come. And this one came from, I have to double check because usually it says which Purana it's from, but it is from one of the Puranas. But the amazing thing is the understanding that others had in these bygone ages to be able to understand these Puranas. But that's why I was saying, when it was said that he was able to enjoy better, even more than before, my hope was that came with a tinge of devotion. That was my hope for Lalit the Gandharva, was that even over simply being granted his form again and being this wonderful heavenly singer is that it comes with some tinge of devotion, some whisper, a glimmer, even just the yearning for devotion, because like we see in the case of Ajamil, it can protect us over lifetimes.
Tinge of devotion, ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you. Darshan time, dear devotees, please turn on your cameras.
Thank you all so much for joining me for another Ekadashi lecture. Hopefully, I'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Hare Krishna, happy fasting!